Taoiseach, yesterday we saw the announcement from Minister Norma Foley that government will replace the existing assessment of need process with a new system. However, I have deep concerns about the proposal announced to replace the requirement for a formal diagnosis when determining access to a special class or a special school. As a former teacher, I cannot overstate the seriousness of this development. This proposal has profound implications for schools, for teachers and for the children and families who rely on appropriate, timely and specialist assessment. Replacing diagnostic criteria with an educational assessment places an unreasonable and unsafe burden on schools. To me, it seems that we will streamline the process of receiving therapies, but leaves a massive void in how special class and places will be assigned. Minister Foley reiterated yesterday that you will no longer need an assessment of need to get a place in a special school or class, instead saying it's up to education on how these places will be assigned. She outlined that some sort of special educational assessment will be established to get a school place for your child, saying it was her hope that the Department of Education would have the new system in place for September 2027 academic year. Taoiseach, who will carry out this new special educational assessment? Will it be teachers or will it be CNOs? And there is no point in the government suggesting that more psychologists, clinicians or multidisciplinary teams will be acquired, because the government has made that money available to hire in these roles, but the roles are not being filled. I also ask you, was Minister Naughton aware of these changes yesterday, or was it a surprise to her, as it was duly noted that there was no representative from the Department of Education at this announcement yesterday? Teachers themselves will tell you that they are not the ones who should be in a position of determining an appropriate place for a child with additional needs. In reality, this leaves parents in a worse-off position. They will now be chasing two parallel pathways: one to get therapies they need and one to get the diagnosis and school place they need. Taoiseach, do you absolutely believe that this makes sense? Yesterday, 85% of teachers surveyed reported moderate to high work-related burnout. Are your government now placing this burden on them? Teachers cannot and should not be expected to take on duties that belong to psychologists, clinicians or multidisciplinary teams. This shift undermines the integrity of the entire assessment process and places schools in an impossible position. It also risks leaving families unsupported and pupils at genuine risk of not receiving an appropriate provision they are entitled to. The proposal seems to be driven not by what is best for children, but the inability of the health and disability sector to manage the assessment of need backlog. Taoiseach, who will carry out these educational assessments? How will the Department of Education manage and resource this responsibility? And crucially here, and I want to answer this question, has the process of establishing this new special educational assessment begun within the Department of Education?
Deputy Taoiseach.
Could I first of all, I would reject completely the assertions made by the Deputy in respect of this. I think you're missing the fundamental point. The assessment of needs framework as it currently is not fit for purpose. Recent High Court decisions have made it less fit for purpose, and the objective of the legislation, along with a whole series of other measures, is to prioritise and increase more timely access to therapies for children. That's the fundamental point. Free up therapists in terms of providing services and treatment. And the Department of Education was intimately involved with the Department of Children and other departments under the Cabinet Subcommittee on Disability in terms of this legislative change. We made a very clear decision early on in government that we were going to do this and grasp the nettle in respect of this, because we can go on here for another 2 years. And people coming in and complaining about this list and that waiting list and that list. And you'll keep on doing that. It's great stuff. Wonderful. This keep going up. The system is completely not fit for purpose. We want to utilise therapists to provide services to children, and we're going to do it. We don't want children waiting to get into a special class or a school's place where the need is obvious. We don't want that delays. We want to get the child access to facilities and therapies immediately.
The question was simple. Who will carry out these educational assessments? Will it be teachers? Will it be CNOs? Who will it be? John Boyle from the INTO said this morning, teachers were not consulted, briefed or even informed in advance of these proposals. It is grossly unfair that government departments are using vulnerable children as political footballs after failing to provide them with timely assessments and therapeutic supports. The questions are fairly simple. Who will carry out these educational assessments that was announced yesterday? I never said that I was against what was announced yesterday. I never said that. I never did. What I said was, who will carry out these educational assessments? That was quite clear. You did not answer that question.
And you did criticise it, by the way.
I didn't. Not once.
From the outset, you've been extremely negative. The whole question was articulated in a negative way. Okay, fine. Well, I welcome your turnaround and reverse within 5 minutes. And in terms of the question, I did say there will be assessment teams that teachers won't be assessing. And I would appreciate if the INTO have issues that engage with us. Engage with the Department of Education. Don't be shooting from the hip. People shouldn't be shooting from the hip all the time. The current system is not fit for purpose, Deputy. And many children will present with special needs from the earliest diagnosis. Very clear that they have special needs. They don't need to be going through elaborate, more further assessment of needs before being allocated a school place. We do need to streamline this. Therapists need to be freed up to provide services, to engage. That's what we want here. Not endless long lists of people stuck for 6 months or 12 months. I mean, we have to do this. No matter what political perspective
Deputy
you are,
Holly Cairns.
the system has to be unblocked.